once we tested it on ourselves and we realized it was good for different skin types and stuff, we were just like, okay, let's manufacture and like, let's distribute, right? And that to me is serving, right? Like that to me is just like, there's a need. I need to help because I'm the boss. This is how I help. We don't have a lot of money, but we'll go ahead and try. We'll do this.
Hello, I'm your host, Evelyn Clark, and this is the 6-Star Business Podcast, where we have conversations with amazing, incredible people all about what it takes to be 6-star, going beyond the status quo, doing things differently, and how they bring purpose, love, and impact into their businesses every day. This episode is one that left my co-host, Endra Hoffman, and myself reeling with big smiles and goosebumps, actually. And it's because Sophina lives, breathes, and operates as a 6-star business owner. She has a remarkable story, and I love that she was so open and shared with us, the journey and the steps. Has been able to turn this around. Her journey and experiences have given her opportunities to create solutions for people, for the community, for employees, for everyday people, and those in need. She has worked for nonprofits, ran a nonprofit herself, and now demonstrates on a daily basis to people what it means to truly be of service. She's selfless, she's humble, and there's a lot of wisdom in this conversation that we can all take. And I'm really looking forward to speaking with Sophina again. This is, I hope, just part 1 with Sophina Placencia. Enjoy. Here we are. We have another multi-continent conversation today for the 6-Star Podcast. And I'm here with my co-host, Endra, who is now in Europe. How are you doing, Endra?
Oh, thanks. I just realized we have 3 continents represented. So excited.
Yes, I'm excited too. And our guest today is Sophina Placencia from Hawaii, USA. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. I'm very much looking forward to this. Our first meeting was delightful, fun, energetic, and I just thought I have to have you on the show. So not that I'm setting the bar too high. I just love being in your presence. Your energy is great. So yeah, looking forward to this.
Thank you so much.
Well, I'd love to get to know you a bit better and let our listeners get to know you a bit. So could you tell us where you are in the world, who you serve, how you serve them, and something you like to do when you're not busy serving people? There's 4 questions. If you get lost, don't worry. I'll come back and I'll fill in the blanks.
All right, awesome. Yeah, you have to forgive me just a little bit because it's definitely evening for me. But yeah, so Sophina from Hawaii, born and raised here. I own a marketing business and I serve the people who are passionate about serving people. And typically they come in the form of nonprofit organizations or social enterprises, social entrepreneurs. And what do I like to do for fun? Oh gosh. I've been getting into bread making. Yeast scares me. And so the fact that I'm trying to like push my own boundaries and use yeast in any type of cooked goods, it was either going to go horribly bad or horribly good. And I'm glad that I'm still alive today. So it's gone all good.
I love that. You're pushing your own boundaries in your hobby time, spare time. It's great.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm glad you're still here too. So well done.
Winning.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I love the sound of what you do. It rings a bell, strikes a chord for me, and I know for Endra, that alignment of purpose, which we'll get more into. And I'm fascinated to learn more about the journey that you've been on that has brought you to where you are today doing what you're doing. Would you like to take us through that journey?
Yeah, sure. I know in the last time we spoke, oh gosh, I I was definitely bawling my eyes out. But just recalling that journey, the good news is we're not going to go through all of that. So I'm going to speed that story up. So I grew up in the nonprofit industry. I'm a second generation advocate for those living in poverty. And it sounds super grand when I say that. But all that means is my mom started up a nonprofit when I was like super young. So I didn't know it at the time, but she was a social entrepreneur. And she sought to do good in the world. And it just so happened that she ended up in a food pantry and grew it from a food pantry to a mid-sized organization. And I spent a lot of my summers, a lot of my free time helping her in her organization or being pawned out to her partner organizations to kind of help them with whatever they needed help with. So that's what I mean about I grew up within the industry, and I was on the front lines of understanding some of the issues, even though I wasn't necessarily, I didn't think I could do anything about it. And because I didn't think I could do anything about it, I steered hard right away from nonprofit work. And I went into security. In fact, I have 5 years federal civil service under my belt. And I thought that was going to be my journey. And then as luck would have it, I wouldn't even say luck. It was a disturbance in the force. And that force said either continue down this route or try to make something happen in the world. And my mom was retiring. The board asked me to put in my resume. I thought it was a joke. And eventually out of that process, they thought I would be a really good fit. And that's when I knew I had a decision to make. Either I go the path of least resistance, and I know what's kind of down the end of that road, working for the federal government, or I try to build upon the foundation that my mom had built. I know last time we spoke, I mentioned that it's kind of like the movie Moana, where the chief takes his daughter up to the mountain and is like, Moana, one day you're going to put your rock on the mountain too. And it was like, yep, my rock on the mountain is going to be, how do I end homelessness for my community? And that's when it became a purpose for me. Trying to actually figure it out. I spent a lot of years traveling the U.S. to learn from the best people in the game, because I had no idea what I was doing as a young, new nonprofit executive director, managing, gosh, depending on the fiscal year, anywhere between $2 million to $7 million in operating budget and 3 programs, like 40 staff. And I'm like, I don't even know what I'm doing, but traveled extensively to figure out from others who were doing really, really good, trying to bring home that information. Then in the midst of all of that, I ended up going to jail because I should have been a little bit more mindful while I was traveling away, and I just wasn't aware of a lot of things. So I ended up having to take responsibility for some things, and led me to jail. And that's when I had my second crossing in the road. That I had to make a choice. Either I was going to stop working for nonprofits ever again, or because that's actually something I said to myself, or figure out a way to do it. And when I was sitting in jail, I figured, okay, I need to figure out a way to do it, because there were just so many women knowing my background asking for help. And it pissed me off, to be frank, that I knew of the organizations, the people who actually wrote for funding to serve women like them. And the fact that they weren't getting the help, it definitely stirred up the burn in me. And I was just like, okay, when I get out, I'm going to have to figure it out. How do I serve those women? And I knew that I couldn't do it as a direct service provider anymore, but I could definitely help a person like me back then. And that's where my ethos really comes from. I'm super passionate about helping the people who help people, because I was just somebody looking at, how do I help? How do I figure this out? And unfortunately, this is also at a time where, we had internet, but you had to know people to get the behind the scenes information, and that requires traveling. And a lot of nonprofit executive directors or social entrepreneurs, they just don't have that capability. to be able to travel. And so I was able to find knowledge, and I was able to build up a pretty good network. And that's my hope, being able to use my skills, all of the experience that I have, all of my knowledge, and help, so we could hopefully end some of the things we're fighting for.
It's so
Sophina.
sorry, I've got this question. I've got this image of you. So you're in jail, and you said that it was the women around that were saying to you, "We're not getting the help we need." Is that right? It was whilst you were there serving the time, and then there was these women around you in the jail that were from perhaps homeless situations or living situations, that told you of their plight, of what they weren't getting from the community providers.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. Was there a specific moment that, like, you can recall where it was that turning point?
Yeah. I know. Yeah. So I called my year in jail as my mandatory vacation, because I'm quite a workaholic, and being in there allowed me just time to, just stop. Like, the world stopped, and I could just focus on me and my experience of it all. And part of that journey was trying to figure out, am I serious about saying I'm not going to work with nonprofits ever again? Because it was a very bad burn, right? And it left a really bad taste in my mouth. And at the same time, it was kind of like, I've got women asking me, do I know, or how do I get this, or how do I do this? And I was just like, why don't you just, I was doing the shameful thing of just redirecting them to a resource book, which was super outdated. And they kept coming back to me, and it was just like, guys, I'm kind of dealing with my own demons here. And then one day, I was a module clerk, and you have like very few jobs to do in our jail. And module clerk is kind of like at the top of the food chain, even though it pays like 25 cents. And you get to manage like the inventories, and you get to kind of like organize the rest of the work lines. And so you have kitchen, janitor, and laundry. And it was one day while I was helping laundry, because we didn't wash it, we just folded it, and then distributed it out to the women. As we were folding clothes and doing the logistical work around that, there was a guard that walked in with an inmate who was working in another module, and apparently she was getting fired that day. And as they were walking in, that guard sat down with our guard and was talking about how, yeah, you know what, she's fired. I'm writing on the paperwork. And so my guard was like, oh, well, why are you firing her, right? And so that guard was just like, oh, because she was talking stink about me. And I'm like, what? Like, how petty is that the jailers are like, yeah, you know what? I can exert my power over you because you were talking stink about me. I'm going to fire you. And I was just saying all kinds of bad words underneath my breath, because I'm just like, this is so stupid. And then my guard was asking her, oh my gosh, you can actually fire somebody for talking stink about you? Like, I want to know how you do that. So, because there's a lot of guards that I would fire because they want to talk stink about me all the time. And I had a big problem with this particular guard, because she is just, I don't speak like this for a lot of people, but she was just an ugly person, like just through and through. And whatever she could exploit, whatever she could do, like, it was just horrible. And so it made me even more upset, even though I'm like beside myself that, my God, they're firing her just because she's talking stink about somebody. And she ended up telling my guard ended up telling my bunkie, who was in charge of property, to ensure that the girl who just got fired had received only the worst clothing that we have in jail. And I'm like, we're already down. I mean, we all wear uniforms, so like there's nothing unique about any of the clothing. And the only thing that they could like really pick on is whether or not you get a hole in your shirt or you get the most faded looking clothes. And I'm just like, it's another step of just pettiness that really chafed at me. And I'm just like, you know what, this is stupid. Like, and my bookie is not going to say no because it's a guard talking to her. And we know that this guard is capable of so many bad things. And so she was just like, okay. And now my bookie has no other choice but to do what this guard says. And I'm just like, you know what, wait, hang on. I've got a little bit of power here. I've got some tools available to me to make sure that we can work within the rules, but also like take this type of penalty off the table, you know? And what I could do was manage the inventory. So it took me about a month, but I managed to get all new uniforms, like vibrant colored uniforms. They weren't faded with time or wholly. And I was able to bring all of those uniforms into the module so that all of the bad stuff that we had, like, eventually got shifted out of our inventory. And so now if she or another guard wanted to use that as punishment, like, have at it, because we've only got the good stuff here. And it all kind of culminated in one day at our rec. Our guard was talking to, there was 2 modules, and she was talking to the next guard, and she was like, hey, do you notice like something different between our girls? And the other guard was just like, what are you talking about? And I'm kind of like overhearing this conversation. And I'm like, what is she talking about? And so she goes, I don't know. I can't put my finger on it, but it just seems like my girls look better than your girls. And so I could only chalk it up to, like, yeah, it's probably because, like, we're dressed better. There's just something about when a woman is dressed good, and it's the same for uniform. It's same for, a standard thing. When you're dressed good, people can tell, there's something that goes along with that. And that's when I realized, like, just something as small as that, not having a lot of power, not having a lot of authority, but the little thing that I could do was that, and it made a world of difference. That even my guard couldn't even put a finger on it, but something was different. And that was when resolve actually, like, occurred for me, that I don't know how I'm going to do it, but when I get out, I'm going to figure it out, and I need to help. I need to do this. So, yeah.
What a powerful story, Sophina. I was curious all along that, what, if you are comfortable sharing it, what has got you into the prison? I mean, I understand you've been running a large organization and 40 staff, as you said. Do you want to teach us what not to do? Or how to do things?
Yeah, absolutely. I can tell you that I'm a lot smarter at how I build my teams and how I make sure I understand the dashboards that I need to, like, the dashboards for the metrics that I need to pay attention to. So, while I was traveling and while I was trying to find the information, and actually even STEM before that. So when I got hired, I had people come over that was part of the previous administration. And so I trusted them. I was also on the board for a period of time. So I've also worked with them. And with that came a level of, well, you know what you're doing. What I want to do is this. And what I want to do is I want to figure out how other people are doing it so that we can be better and we can actually make an impact in our community. And so in order to do that, I'm going to have to take a look elsewhere. I have to go to I have to travel. I have to figure it. I have to find other people to talk to. And while I do that, I'm hoping that you continue to do the good work that you're doing, and, not run the bus into a wall. And so I never, that was my attitude going in. I understood the budgets that we had. Like, I was on the board. I understood, like, what fiscally all of it meant, but I wasn't the one to really pay attention to all of the minutia of, okay, well, you need my signature on this check for something that one of our programs needed. Okay. If you're telling me that this is what it is, okay, cool. Because I thought I had, how do you say, gatekeepers to ensure that whatever's on my desk and I signed off on that, it was for legitimate reasons. I just never paid attention to, I just never thought to question whether or not they were good gatekeepers. And I never thought to ask deeper questions until I realized that they couldn't hide it anymore. And when they couldn't hide it anymore, things were being brought up to my attention that then I started asking harder questions. And that's when I found out that there was a lot of theft in the organization. I mentioned to have I mentioned in the, I have a hard time saying your name. Help me out here. Aveline. I always want to say Average. See, this is why I'm no good with names.
Oh, good.
So I was sharing with Aveline previously that I didn't go to jail for somebody else. Like, I know that I went to jail because I was the captain of the team and I should have paid attention better. How that is, I have no idea. But now that I understand, like, not having a really good team that you can rely on, what that looks like that's where I think I'm in a better position now, because I'm extra careful with the people that I bring on, not just on my own teams, but if I'm helping my clients build up their teams, I'm even more careful because I know theft is rampant in the industry. And yeah, it's unfortunate.
It's I could only imagine from our listeners, I don't think it's something we don't hear, right? The people going to jail, and you must get this a lot, Sophina, for people that first hear about it, and yet it's kind of no different than us, paying the price for a mistake that we've made, and often as humans, we pay for it personally or in private. Yours just happened to be in a more public place or public way, and physically you weren't able to do your work anymore. And obviously it taught you a lot, and you've grown from it. And look, I'm sure the experience showed you so much about humanity. It was like you said, your year of your forced holiday, your mandatory vacation, that actually gave you a lot of perspective on life.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think part of it is like working in the field. It takes a special someone to work in any type of nonprofit, either as a staff person or even as a volunteer. And part of that is like, you realize you don't have any blinders on. Like, what you see in front of you is not theft. It's not drugs. It's not abuse. It's not all of the things. What you see in front of you is just a person needing help. And I was stuck in a place where when I went to jail, I was stuck in a place where I forgot that. I forgot that I'm just a person that also needs help when I get out, or need help while I'm in. And there was, it's going to make me cry because every time I replay it in my head, it always makes me cry. When I first went in, I thought I was prepared. Like, the judge gave me time to settle my affairs, and gave me time to turn myself in. And so that at least allowed me some prep time mentally, to prepare for being a year away. And so I thought to myself, okay, cool. My friends threw me a pre-prison party, which is super epic, and it helped me get through a lot of the hard times that I had in there, because it can be lonely. And every single time I felt myself dipping into that loneliness mode, I just got to think through all of the people that showed up to my pre-prison party. And I was just like, okay, cool. Like when I go in, I have some strengths. This is where my mind can be at. I'm going to document, I'm going to journal my journey and get back to journaling because that's something that I wanted to do. And I wasn't prepared when I went in that, no, you're not going to have access to a pen. You're not going to have access to a pencil. You're not going to have access to paper. You're not going to have access to all of these things. And I'm like, well, how do I adapt? And it was that first week that I was in, I think I was just a few days in. And of course, women are just kind of feeling you out. Like, who are you? Never seen you before. And you kind of realize when you go in that, yeah, most of these women, they kind of know each other. And so I'm like the odd one out. But at the same time, because I work within the field, I ran into some previous clients that like they knew of me, but they never met me because I was the executive director. I wasn't out in the field with my team. And I remember just sitting down and one of the ladies was like, hey, so I heard you're with this organization. Like, what organization were you with? And so I let them know the organization name. And she's like, no way. And I was like, yeah. And so she goes, okay, I got to tell you this story. And I'm like, uh-oh, okay. Like, I can't do anything about it now. Like, you're going to grieve. And so she was just like, okay, so, your organization saved my life. And I was just like, I wasn't prepared for that. So that's why I'm kind of tearing up now. So she goes, I've been homeless on and off for the better part of 15 years. And I've seen, like, your team has been consistent, like coming out to me, making sure that I'm okay, making sure that we got food, we got health, we got like all these things. And because that's what part of the job was, right? Making sure we had a team that went out regularly. And so she goes, one day, I had a really bad burn. I lit up my pipe and I didn't realize in the middle of getting high, I passed out and the pipe had fell on my leg and it burned me. But I didn't realize how bad that burn was until Auntie Tulu had come out, who is my outreach manager. And when Auntie Tulu saw me, she was just like, I gotta bring somebody out to see you. And she had brought in one of our partners who were registered nurses. And the nurse had come and checked her out and said, no, we have to call the ambulance right now. And so they called the ambulance. They took her to the healthcare center. And it turned out she had sepsis. Like that burn had gotten really infected that now it was sepsis. And she almost lost her leg. She was in the hospital for a few months and she could have lost her life. And she was just like, if it wasn't for Auntie Tulu being there, it wasn't for your organization being there, I wouldn't be alive today. I wouldn't be here talking to you, right? And I'm just like, I'm so glad, right? Like, I'm so glad. And so she goes, is there anything you need? And I'm like, I could use a pen. I could use a pen. And so she was just like, here. So she pulls a pen out of her bra. She kind of slides it over to me. She goes, you're not supposed to have this because this is only for work line. But here you go. Make sure you keep it hidden. And I'm like, I started crying out in the open because I was just like, here I was questioning my own worth. And here's this person, she didn't know me, right? And she was just like, what do you need? She gave me a pen even though she wasn't supposed to. And that meant everything. And so that's when I realized, like, that's us as providers. I've had that happen to me so many times where I never understood it. That a client would come up to me and ask me for the simplest thing. Maybe it's a shirt. Maybe it's something to eat that day. Or maybe it's, an application. Or maybe it's just a phone call. And they would just start crying. And I'm like, it's okay, it's okay. Like, if I can help, I will help. And to be on the opposite end of that, I was just like, holy crap, I get it now. I totally get it. And that's when it was like, it was a, and that's when I realized, like, I gotta do something, because people like her, they need organizations like mine, right? Like, they need people to continue to help. And yeah, there was some bad stuff that kind of went down, and it made me question my own faith in people. But in getting inspired, like, that's humanity right there, right? Like, people innately, they want to be able to try to do whatever little good that they can.
Wow.
A pen.
This is very deep, Sophina. What would you say has changed inside you by the time you came out of prison and almost started a new life? Like, that was a massive change in your psychology, isn't it? That 1 year.
Yeah. I think the thing that changed in me was I had a lot more resolve. I was a lot more clear as to what I was trying to do, even though I couldn't articulate exactly the words. I used to tell a lot of people that, even though I took over the job and I never really expected to be chosen out of the pool of applicants, I thought my application was just a filler for the pool, the search that they needed. And so I was super surprised that they pulled mine. And when they did, even though it was I didn't make it as I didn't take my decision lightly. I always still kind of knew that type of work wasn't the kind of work for me. Direct services, I mean. Like, I grew up in it, and I know how to, I know how to logistically organize feedings and services and all of that stuff, but something still was missing for me, even though, like, the feel good was there. And that's partly of why I was like, well, the sooner I can get done with this, like, end homelessness in my community, the sooner I can really find my true purpose, my true passion. And unfortunately that ended badly. But once I left jail and I realized, like, okay, this is my resolve. I have to help. Like, that was the change in itself. Like, I have to help. And now I'm not carrying the weight of an entire organization or a legacy or, the things that were required because I'm in this box. Now I can determine for myself, like, what feels good to me and how I help. And I'm analytical by nature. I love people observing as well. And so communications and marketing just became something that I love doing. And I was already doing it because I love sharing other people's stories. And that's when I thought, okay, well, I'm going to start up a marketing and communications company because that's a big gap that was needed in the nonprofit industry. And then I quickly realized, like, oh my God, I hate myself. Because I didn't realize that I don't like the type of marketing that is rampant in the industry. And what I mean by that is nonprofits, we knowingly or unknowingly, we love to exploit the stories of our clients. And our clients have no other choice but to say yes, right? Like, and that's terrible, And over and over and over again, I would get appeals or be asked to help on these campaigns, these marketing campaigns for donations or fundraisers, and given stories of clients who have gone through the services and are now at this destination and be able to use that as the marketing ploy. And I was just like, I hate that. Like, this is in your marketing material. You're going to put it up on your website. It's now in the web. Sometimes it's going to hit the news, and now it's there forever. And that family, whether or not they're prepared for what happens, they're going to have to deal with their story of, whatever that story is. It's going to be in the public domain for forever. And I was just like, you know what? No, there has to be a better way. And I love marketing. I love communications, but I didn't want to do it that way. And that's when I was like, how do I do something else? How do I help? I understand the reason why they need marketing and communications is to bring in money. And I understand that's the reason why the story is because, people, there's heartstrings to pull. But I was like, no, people want better for the nonprofit industry. People want to give more, but they just don't see problems getting any better. And so that's when I was like, okay, how do I go back to what it is that I know, what I was actually doing in my nonprofit, as well as in just the things that I've done in various nonprofits. And I realized like I had a really good knack at being that entrepreneur and solving problems, like process problems. So I created a framework for it. I called it Mission Money Assets, and it's a way to help nonprofits create income generating vehicles that are mission related, so that they have forms of sustainable funding without needing to exploit the stories of their clients. So in terms of that shift, that type of person, like it was that resolve. Like instead of now saying I want to end homelessness because that's what my job entailed, like I needed to end homelessness. I was the head of a homeless service organization. Now I can pick and choose the missions that I truly care about. Homelessness is one of them, but overall, like there's a lot. I want to make sure that kids get fed. I want to make sure that people get fed. I want to make sure that indigenous rights are upheld. There's so many aspects of it that I'm like, with my marketing communications and now with my concept Mission Money Assets to help nonprofits create their own income generating vehicles. Now I can serve the people who were just like me, but not in homeless services and any other type of nonprofit.
That's really inspiring. And I love it. I love this concept and how you've been able to use that commercial experience or your process skills and the managerial skills to come up with a tool that you can offer in the not just the homelessness but the other nonprofits as well. That's brilliant. Well done. Yeah.
Thank you.
Have you found your place? Like, are you doing the thing that you were searching for before?
Yes. And I think that's where, like, I mean, it's been 6 years now, 7 years since I was released. And it was hard going in the beginning, but I slowly was picking at it, just keep walking one foot in front of the other. And I feel now with not just marketing, like I love to do the marketing, but I just didn't love the way that nonprofits market. And now that I have Mission Money Assets, I find with those powers combined, it's kind of like that Captain Planet saying, but with those powers combined, like I feel at the top of my game because it appeals to the two sides of me that like I bring into everything anyway. Creativity and my project management skills, and marketing is nothing more than that. I mean, I wouldn't say it's nothing more than that project management, but as soon as you got the message, as soon as you have that message and you know what that product can do, like, oh my gosh, it just becomes, a matter of scale, right? Like how do we do more? How do we do all these things? And the fact that I don't need to pigeonhole myself into any one type of mission, I can work. Right now, I'm working with an organization that is fighting childhood obesity and diabetes through a mobile game. And I'm like, what? That is exciting. or even being a part of teams that was creating software to do rapid rehousing, like lubricating that process. And I'm just like, it's a breath of fresh air once you find that spot where, yeah, you feel like you're meant to be here.
Are you excited about one of the projects that you could maybe explain us how this works? Because I heard, wow, giving, a vehicle to earn their own money and generate income, that's the biggest gift that anyone can give, I believe. And I'm in the nonprofit space as well. Do you want to give us a bit of a rundown how you have set it up? What was the key, cogs of, wheels turning the right way so everyone was a winner?
Yeah, so let's see. Well, I typically tell I typically share my three stories. My three stories is this: like the first time I came across this concept, like this was just the the atom of this concept. It was I was still an executive director, and my outreach team asked me one day, like, "Hey, do you know where we can have bars of soap?" And I'm a year and a half into my organization being the executive director, and I'm like still learning some things. I'm like, I have no idea where do we normally get our soaps? And they were just like, oh, typically we get it from the hotels, but they switched up their vendor, and this is 2008, 2009, so the housing bubble crashed, and like just financial markets, just like, yeah, it was a bad time for me, a nonprofit. And so the hotels had changed their vendor, and they no longer had surplus, and we weren't the only ones asking, so there was no supply. And I'm like, oh gosh, okay, soaps. I don't know. At the same time, my shelter was like, hey, if they need soap, we need soap too. And I'm like, what do you need bar soaps for? And they're like, no, we need laundry detergent. And I'm like, what? How have I not heard about these things before? But anyway, I didn't know how I was going to help my team do their work. And then I was like, at the time I was building an aquaponics system. I kill grass. And so an aquaponics system for me, if you don't know what it is, like it's a closed circuit, like I would say it's a closed circuit harvesting system. You feed fish, the fish poops in water, and that water gets fed to crops. It's kind of like hydroponics, and it's a closed circuit. I can feed fish. I can't grow grass. And so I was building an aquaponics system at the time, and I was following some homesteading blogs, and just to make sure that I was building it correctly. And I came across a recipe for homemade laundry detergent. And I was like, what? There's a recipe for homemade laundry detergent? And it all of a sudden, ding. Of course, if the pioneers could do it, why couldn't we do it? And I was like, okay, went back to my team. I'm like, I think I have this crazy idea. I priced out like how much all of it costs. And we made our first batch, and we tested it on the staff first. And then when we realized like it was good, it was only 3 ingredients, so there wasn't anything really harmful in it. Once we tested it on ourselves and we realized it was good for different skin types and stuff, we were just like, okay, let's manufacture and like let's distribute, right? And that to me is serving, right? Like that to me is just like, there's a need, I need to help because I'm the boss. This is how I help. We don't have a lot of money, but we'll go ahead and try. We'll do this. And when we did that, we didn't charge our people. Like our people were asking, that's what they needed. And then I get a call from one of our big donors, and the big donor was just like, hey, I heard you have soap. And I'm like, yeah, it's going great. I'm excited, that our people are using it. And so she was like, can I buy your soap? And I'm like, no. And so she was just like, why not? And I'm like, because they're not for sale. And so she goes, well, I tell you what, how's if I stop giving you donations? And I was like, oh, what? She goes, I'm gonna give you money if I can buy your soaps. And I'm like, okay. So I'm figuring this out as I kind of go, because like I've never sold anything before, not like that. And so then I quickly realized like, oh, wait, okay, cool. I actually have a sustainable program. Like every time a customer bought one of my soaps, I could give one away for free. And the profit would also help me take care of hiring somebody, giving them valuable work experience to help us manufacture. And it's not a big process. It's a mixing bowl, a grater, and a spoon, and some brown paper bags. Manufacture it, pay them for that, and then our overhead, our bookkeeping and stuff for that, and then a few dollars over that, we were able to put in our unrestricted coffers. And that's when I realized, like, sustainable program. Like, what? And I learned it through my aquaponics system. Go figure. So then when I came out of jail, I'm no longer in my nonprofit, and I had to reinvent myself, and marketing communications was it. But also, it was during the tech bubble, right? And everything tech and software was coming out. And I was just like, how do I do this? How do I like learn this skill and be able to like help serve the industry? And so my first software program was rapid rehousing software. And it came about because I knew one of the biggest struggles that I had in my organization was finding landlords who were willing to give second chances to people with bad rental histories. And we had housing managers that had got their clients ready as best they could to be ready for those units, but they didn't have enough supply. And I was like, well, how's about I build like an Airbnb or Zillow for that problem? Like, just lubricate that process. Like, allow landlords who are willing to give second chances and we're actively looking, but nonprofits fail at outreaching to the right people. Allow them to post their units up online for free, and allow the case managers to skip the rental application, because all of these landlords have rental applications. Skip that. But be able to pull down these units and like do the liaisoning, right, between the client, right fit for right unit, right landlord. And the beta test on that was phenomenal. Like, it was super cool. But I had a problem. I didn't know how I was going to monetize it. And then I realized, like, the people that I had beta tested with, I forgot that part of that liaisoning was monthly inspections, unit inspections, making sure that they had a vendor list, like lawn care, plumbers, like all of these guys, roofers. And so I sold that as a value added package where the landlords got to pay into it. Because at this point, everything was kind of break even, other than the platform. The landlord had a unit for rent. The client had money to rent. And there was a program win because we got to get one more client off our list, right? So we were kind of break even, but then by adding in that value added service, like lawn care maintenance, giving you the housing inspection sheets to protect the asset, we broke more than even, we broke a profit. And so those profits could be reinvested into the software and all that stuff. But unfortunately, it was still too early for me. And when I say that, it was because like my name came with bad publicity and stuff. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to gain more traction with it, and so it kind of fell to the wayside. Even though like it was still so good to see like families moving. And then the third one was a mobile app. This elderly gentleman was telling me, "Babe, Lyft is coming to Hawaii. Did you know you can open up your phone? You can push a button and you get a taxi come to you?" And I'm like, yeah, that's what it's supposed to do. And so he goes, okay, hear me out. What if I push a button and somebody delivers me poke and beer, raw fish and beer? And I'm like, that would be awesome. And so he goes, can you build it? And I'm like, oh, I don't know. Let me try. And so I did that. And we actually had a really good first launch. I was in the middle of my second launch when there was a pedestrian that was killed. 18-year-old boy was killed because of a drunk driver. And as much as the community was mad because it was, promise lost, I was mad because coming from the nonprofit side, I knew that there were organizations whose sole job it is to help reduce these types of instances. And I always come at it from a perspective that we could be doing more. Everybody could be doing more, but especially nonprofits could be doing more if only they have the financial means and capability to do it. And so that's when I realized, like, this mobile app could have been a harm reductive app. It could have been a harm reductive tool. I'm not saying that this app would have prevented that, but it could still help reduce drunk driving on the road, because you would have a paying public pay for the service of delivery, alcohol on the road, right? Like, not be drunk while doing that, like get it delivered to you and stuff. And so it was good. That second launch was great. And then, unfortunately, we were first to market. We didn't have Uber Eats or anything else like that. And Liquor Commission didn't know how to regulate us. And I was like, oh my God, again. But so those 3 examples, they're all mission-related income-generating vehicles that help solve a problem that you're trying to solve. And so there's no doubt within my mind that as long as you're clear in terms of your particular mission in your nonprofit, there is no way we can't figure out what an income-generating vehicle could be for you. And what I love about, and the reason why I call it a mission money asset, is because not only does it provide mission money, but as you grow it, it actually becomes an asset. And that's where, as we know as people, right, where the wealth game is built is when you buy real estate or you can invest into businesses or whatever. Like that particular thing is something that you can sell off in case, for good business strategy. If you choose to sell it off, those proceeds could help do something else or reinvest it into something else. And that's where, I hope that answered the question. I hope that it gave you an idea of like what it could be. I always say it could be physical products. It could be digital products. It could be a combination of both. Yeah.
Sophina, I absolutely love it. I've been, really inspired in the past by a couple of people who have been change makers in a similar way. And I love that you have been able to see a problem, come up with a solution, and then make it sustainable. My belief is that every community has that ability. And wouldn't it be amazing if there was some kind of incubator or a place that inspired or gave the resources and knowledge and know-how to a community to create that? Anyway, that's another conversation. We can do that in part 2, because I'm sure that would be a lot of fun to talk about. You are 6-star. You realize this. Like, maybe you don't, but Andrew and I are listening to this, and like, this is, what is it, conversation number 120 or something like that I've done in this podcast. And the way that you operate, think, breathe, act, feel, everything you do epitomizes the values and what we have come to know as being 6-star. The humanity, the passion, the mission, serving, finding a way to be profitable and serve the community or serve your customers. It's just brilliant. I just want to honor you for that and just go, well done, sister. It's just so inspiring.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much. When, you posed that question, like, what does 6-star mean to me? I was like, more than it's that one. I immediately went back. My brain works really funny. It goes to humor first. And it was, I forget what movie it was, but it was, the thing to be extraordinary is that little bit of extra. And so when I got that question, like, what does 6-star mean to me? I'm just like, it's that one above the 5. That's what it is. It's that little bit of extra to be extraordinary. And I think that's where it's at. There's, in the nonprofit field, it's taboo to want to say capitalism. Like, it's a bad C word. But I think it behooves us to not take all the tools that are available and try to fit it to our needs. And I think that's where that final star really comes in. And so I'm grateful. I'm grateful for this podcast. I'm grateful for you reaching out, and grateful for Andre. Like, we're 12 hours apart from each other. Like, I'm so glad to have met you folks.
You have unlocked the 6-star code, and I applaud you for that, because I think probably we need to learn from you as well. Maybe have you among us.
Oh, I'm still learning from everybody else. And so I think that's what excites me every day, is the fact that you never know what you're going to learn. And yeah, as long as I think we can always be in that phase of, oh, that was so cool. That was amazing. How do I apply it? Like, I think if we just take that's extra star, that one step, I think we can be better, right? I was talking about that do more, be more. I think that's that right there. How do we apply it?
Yeah. And that comes
Probably.
from the self, the person, right? It comes from us.
It does. It really does. Yeah, it totally does.
What comes to me is probably the future of non-profit is actually profit. So we can do over with this problem forever.
Yeah, I play around with. I'm a marketer, so I love I can come up with some pretty inventful names like Mission Money Assets or My Profitable Nonprofit. And of course that gets all of my people all up in an uproar. They're just like, how dare you? But at the same time, like, I don't advocate that. I take a look back at who I was and what I was doing and what I was capable of doing at the time. And I created Mission Money Assets because I knew that I would have never been able to create a social enterprise. And that's always the biggest fear. That's always the biggest pain point for executive directors, that they're just like, you know what, we can't be profitable because we're going to lose our tax status. And it's just like, no, it needs to be mission related. That's how you stay away from UBIT. But two, the next thing they say, if I can make a profit, well, I need to shield everything else. So I'm going to create a social enterprise entity, a for-profit entity, to be able to house that, whatever that asset is. And I'm like, me back then, I didn't have capacity. Like, I was already at the till with 3 programs, 40 staff, any given year, $2 to $7 million in my budget. I'm like, I didn't have enough bandwidth to open up another business. I already had 3 projects. And so, but my soap, totally hands off, right? Like, all I needed to make sure was the new bookkeeping company that I had could manage all of the books for that. And it became passive in a sense, right? And because we weren't falling into, oh, we're going to be taxed for it, like, it could stay under my one umbrella and it just be one of those line items that we talk about in my board meeting. Like, it's fine. Or one of those items where we talk about in my program meeting where they're saying, okay, soaps are going out, they're good. Like, our families are, at least, we can't provide them everything, but at least they're clean when they're outside, right? And so I think that's just it. Like, nonprofits, if they can find a way, I wouldn't necessarily say it is the future of nonprofits, but I know that this is the way to do more.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really inspired by that, and it's exciting. I love the creative thinking, the inspired thinking, and I'd love to have you back for round 2 at some stage, Sophina, so we can delve more into 6-star and business and solutions and all of that. So if you're up for that, we'd love to have you. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And hopefully by then I can stop trying to pronounce a G within your name. I am so sorry.
Don't worry, it's totally fine. And I'm used to having people say my name in different ways my whole life. So
I feel you there.
We've got to come to an end and wrap up. We do have a hard stop. Is there any little piece of tidbit or a gold nugget you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Tidbit or gold nugget? You're capable of so much with so little. Like, I could change I could change the outlook of somebody. I could impact somebody. Like, she didn't know what she was saying, but by just managing inventory, and that changed a lot. And that made me realize, like, I can do something with so little. I know it's very cliche to say, like, yeah, go out and hug somebody, right? Or just do something really nice for somebody. But if you're in business, like, I think even more so since we're in business, business, no matter what business you are, you're helping people. You can take one extra step and see, well, how much more good could we do? And it doesn't take you any more than just say, hey, I found a recipe for something and it's part of what we do anyway. How's about we do this?
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. Brilliant. Thank you so much, Sophina. Thank you, Indra. I hope you've enjoyed this one. It's been awesome, hasn't it?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you, folks.
Thank you, Sophina. Have a good evening. Yes, have a great day, Indra. And we'll all be in touch again in the future, for sure.
Awesome. Wonderful.
Thanks.
Have a good one. Aloha.